Hey there, we're the Westlaw Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Skoz-Caspo.
Well, guys, we are here today to talk about an absolute beatdown that happened in Ann Arbor this past weekend. And no, I'm not talking about the football team. We'll get to them later because that was just awful. I'm talking about field hockey. I'm talking about your national champion field hockey team, which absolutely laid the smackdown on St. Joe's 5-0. Just dominant performance throughout the entire game. Finished the first half with 5 goals. It was set a record for the most goals in a half in a championship game. Just next level. And, they came out so hot and just held, there was, it was not in any doubt in the second half.
It reminded me of lacrosse against BC 2 seasons ago, right? Where it's like, as Northwestern fans, you're not, in the huge moments, you're not used to things just being so smooth and incredible from the absolute get-go.
Yeah, I'm watching the game, and my daughter's like, we're winning, we won. I'm like, listen, yes, but until it's over, we can't actually, You're absolutely right. We have won this game, and there's a whole quarter left. But we can't actually celebrate until it's time to celebrate. But my God, what a game! What a season!
Incredible. I mean, we've talked about it, but it's one of the greatest Northwestern teams of all time in any sport. There are a bunch of different ways you can measure it, but as we've talked about before, this team achieved. They're the only non-lacrosse team ever in Northwestern team sports to achieve a perfect regular season. They had the one blemish, the tourney final against Michigan, on their resume. That's it. Aside from that, this team spent all season taking the best of the best. We never got that rematch with North Carolina that everyone was waiting for because North Carolina was upset in the Final Four by St. Joe's. But it's like you watch. This team just has so much team excellence and dominance. There's so many different ways you can cut it. I mean, if you look at just the depth of the team, this team had 4. I mean, Maddie Zimmer was the player of the tournament, but all tournament teams: Zimmer, Sessa, Tromp, Lauren Wattis. So then, you're talking about a player like OBC, who any team, Olivia Bent-Cole, who any team would just kill to have. She's not on the tournament team, which, she probably should have been. But the depth of this team is insane. Every one of the players that I just named either are Olympians or are national team members, the exception being Tromp, who unfortunately for us is an American, so otherwise she would be a national team member. But it goes on, and it's like you can see this team win in utterly dominant fashion like they did in the national championship game, and you can also see them grit out tough games. I mean, we talked about this team has been blessed for years now with Annabelle Skubish in goal, one of the best of the best of the best.
What's wild is you didn't even see her in the championship game because they only put one shot on her.
Right, but it's like in games you look at the game before this, the semifinal, because that's the thing. Northwestern, they had some blowout wins this season, but they also had some really tight ones, and where you're really depending on having an unbelievable backstop and having amazing defense and being like, you know what, 1 goal is going to be enough today, 2 goals are going to be enough today. That's what the semi was like against UMass. You had Skubish playing amazingly in goal. Really, both goalkeepers in that game were incredible. You had Ilse Tromp making an incredible goal-saving play.
God.
I mean, literally swiping it off the line to save a goal. Incredible defensive play. And then your Olympians, Zimmer and Sessa combining for a goal in the semi, where all you can do is just be like, there's not but 5 players in the country that can combine for a goal like this, and we have 2 of them, and they're both Olympians. So it just goes on and on. This team is truly a special team. They're one of the all-time great teams. They are stacked with talent in a way that really lacrosse is really the only comparison point. But these are, you got seniors and fifth years like Zimmer, like Lauren Wattis, who are leaving with 2 national titles, and that's incredible and unprecedented in Northwestern Field Hockey history.
2 national titles, 4 appearances in the last 4 years in the national championship game, an undefeated regular season in 2024, 21-1 overall this season. I mean, just this is probably the greatest individual season in Northwestern sports history. Minus, did lacrosse go wire to wire undefeated one season?
I believe lacrosse has had a couple undefeated seasons. I think that's right. I was about to say in the glory days.
In the glory days, yeah.
We're still there. We're still there.
Yeah, in those 6 straight championship years. Yeah. So an undefeated season obviously goes beyond. I don't think they had one. Yeah, I could be wrong. But yeah, it's just something to behold. Skubish was getting a lot of and well-deserved praise on the broadcast. Just her career is incredible. She had 14 shutouts this year, improved her save percentage.
Wait, 21-1, and she had 14 shutouts.
Yes.
Just think about that for a second. 2/3 of the games shutouts. Insane.
Incredible.
She allowed 14 goals
all year.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. And overall for her career, like, she's allowing 0.9 goals per game. She allowed 0.6 this year, about on par with what she did last year. It's just unreal, her performance, an all timer. But this is a dynasty now. Like, this is what Tracy Fuchs has built is a legitimate dynasty, and they're gonna, carry it forward as far as they can go. Sessa comes back next year. There's a ton of other talent coming back next year. This team's going to be able to recruit just about anybody that they want, and it's a hell of a lot of fun to cheer for a winner, boys.
Oh, absolutely.
It's incredible. They are absolutely amazing. Again, like you mentioned, like Skubish in goal, that's another national team member. And given that we're coming off an Olympic year, and that not only Sessa and Zimmer, but also Coach Fuchs represented us at the Olympics, it just adds to it. It's like there's this like Team USA feel too, where it's like almost this patriotic piece of it too. Ironic, given that again we have players like Ilse Trump on this team who are Netherlands, from the home of field hockey, the Netherlands. And that's the other piece too. Where did we learn so much about that? From Lauren Wattis, personally. Like when she came on the pod and previewed the season for us and was just so great at walking us through everything. And we've been able to get to know her and get to know her family, and to see her go wire to wire. And by the way, expect her back on the pod very soon. Wink, wink. But that's another angle of it too, and I think like we're all familiar with that across like a bunch of different sports, like football for a lot of us in this community particularly, but where you really get to know a lot of the families and a lot of the players, and field hockey was like that for us this year too. So really cool, really special, fantastic for them. So many things. I mean, watching them come back in the middle of the night from Ann Arbor and have them turn the sprinklers on and them all run like Bull Durham style out onto the field and just get soaked and everything.
When it was cold as hell too.
Oh, and when I'm sure it was freezing.
I'm sure they were feeling no pain.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So incredible. And then the other thing too, I was thinking about this again because it really kind of blows my mind how many times this can happen at Northwestern, but This is a team that, again, you have Maddie Zimmer. You're talking about an Olympian. You're talking about one of the best of the best of the best. The numbers Ashley Sessa put up this season, she has 67 points. Number 2 on our team is Zimmer with 32. And you're talking about Zimmer. You're talking about a player of the year. You're talking about the Big Ten player of the year. You're talking about an Olympian. And then Sessa's numbers. Ashley Sessa simply is like, she may, at the end of the day, be the biggest star field hockey has seen heretofore to this point. She is someone who was kind of put on this earth to make field hockey a higher profile sport. And she still has 2 years left at Northwestern, and that's the level of impact she's going to have. And I think we're all so familiar with the fact that Northwestern somehow has been blessed with other players of a similar stature in other sports, chiefly Izzy Skane being one of the biggest ones that we're thinking about. And that yet we still have Madison Taylor on this team, who is probably going to be arguably the standard bearer if you had to pick a single player for women's lacrosse for the next 2 years. And it's just like, and then you look at softball and you have like a Kansas Robinson, who at the very least is going to be arguably as big a standard bearer in the Big Ten for softball. And it's like, these all feel like generational players, and yet Northwestern seems to be a place that is just minting these players regularly. And it's incredible, and we should all feel so lucky that we're a part of it.
Just to like put a point on what I said earlier, so 2 undefeated seasons for the lacrosse team, 2005 and 2009. The 2009 one being the particularly impressive one, 23-0. The last of the consecutive championship seasons. A 5-year run in which they lost 3 total games. Whew. Anyways, so, call this, 1C, if you will. But again, an incredibly impressive year. I said 21-1 earlier. It's 23-1. Apologies, folks, but yeah, just an incredible season from that. And we I don't want to beat around the bush. I know you said wink, wink, John. Like we are going to try to get Lauren back on to talk us through what championship weekend was like. What the season has been like, the journey with teammates coming back and to capture the championship that they were gunning for, and we can't wait to hear more about this season and this team.
Yeah, I mean, and once again, just to echo that, congratulations, field hockey national champions, just so awesome. Unfortunately, that takes us to
it's a real whiplash weekend. Yeah,
we have to talk about the other blowout that happened in Ann Arbor this past weekend.
And to be fair, we're going to try not to as much as we can.
Yeah, I mean, this football game was brutal.
It was miserable.
It was bad. It was just bad all around, and like. It was wild because, the first half, it was tight. It was like, oh, okay. But at the end of the first half was basically a rerun from the week before against Ohio State. Michigan scores, like, going into the half. They get the ball coming out. Boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, we see the ball back, and, it's out of reach. So, like, and then just the second half was just a catastrophe of epic proportions on all aspects of everything. So, I mean, it's not worth going through the nuts and bolts of the game itself. We're sitting here now 4-7. I know we'd spoken about the possibility of getting the APR bid with a 5-7 record. It doesn't look like that's happening this year.
It's not mathematically impossible.
So you're saying there's a chance.
If we pull it off, buy a lottery ticket. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Let's bake it. We got to beat Illinois, which is looking like a hell of a tall task right now, given they're 8-3, I believe, and
they're pretty solidly the fifth best team in the Big Ten. They
look decent. They look like a really decent football team. They're performing on both sides of the ball. The quarterback performance has persisted throughout the year. They've got a exceptional wide receiver, the way Pep Bryant is playing, and we don't have a candle to hold up against that team.
And on top of all of that, they simply have the special sauce that is finding ways to win, and they do it week after week after week.
Winning is a skill, as Dan Rubenstein often says on the Solid Verbal podcast. And then, in addition to beating Illinois, we would need roughly 10 other teams, 10 of the 12 other teams that are sitting at 5-6 right now, to also lose. So there would not be enough teams to fill bowl slots. So this is, this weekend is it's only about pride. It's only about the hat, and we are certainly going to be. I will certainly be tuning in and cheering for the Cats to pull off the unexpected and knock Illinois off their pedestal. But it is a tall ass order, and even if they do, a bowl is not in the picture.
Yeah, and it's all, the whole thing just sucks. Us being like, all right, so what are we going to talk about this week? And being like, well, we don't really want to talk about the game. And And there are like some discussions that we're going to, get into that I wouldn't say are fun per se, but it just kind of is where we are. I mean, I was sitting with friend of the pod, Gary Gilland, watching this game, and right before, and the defensive piece of it, right, where it's like, it's that crazy stat. There's in it 5 straight games of giving up touchdowns. You might have said it already, Sam, inside the last 2 minutes of the half, I think.
Yeah, I mentioned it, but I didn't go into the details.
Yeah, right, and it's like but then there's this thing, and I know, like, for a lot of people being like, this team gave up 50 points, so, like, I don't want to hear it. And it's like, look, I get it. It is just so hard for me. Like, this was a bad defensive performance. There's no way around it. They got trucked. But the defense has been our thing for such huge parts of this season in the face of an offense that is going to some statistical depths that you rarely ever see. And prior to Michigan scoring that touchdown at the end of the first half, we were sitting at 10-6, down 10-6, and in my head I was just like, well, if we just don't give up points, you're doing some mental exercise where you're like, well, maybe somehow you will find more points. Well, when the reality was, truth be told, we gave up 50 in this game. Michigan needed 7 because we weren't scoring more points in that game. And it's brutal to say that. And this is the thing that I guess is going to kind of take us to some of these discussions. And honestly, it's like this feudal would you rather kind of situation. But the numbers this season in terms of total yards are staggering. And staggering to the point that we put up a tweet thread about, like, is this clickbaity title, but it's like, is this the worst Northwestern offense of all time? Only because suddenly some people are looking at the numbers being like, wait, where does this rank of all time? And like we said, the short answer is no. You go back to the 80s and you go back beyond. There are, as horrific as it may be to say, depths that have been plumbed far below this. But 270 yards a game, which is what we're scoring right now, these are so low. And again, like, we'll get into this because a lot of people are being like, all right, this 2019, 2022, 1999, but strictly from a numeric perspective. And Scuzz will
from that numeric perspective, because I don't agree with you.
Right. Well, that's what I mean. From a yardage perspective, and this is, we'll get into the context of these seasons and everything else that goes in. This is an unbelievably low number. And not only that, but when you take the Eastern Illinois game out of it, which is a massive yardage outlier, the number drops down to 252 yards a game. 252 yards a game. There are several teams this season in NCAA scoring gaining double that many yards. For point of reference, like, if you look at that 252 yard, the 2022 season, the season where everybody wanted Mike Bajakian to be fired after that season, when our offense scored 13.8 points a game, we were gaining 85 more yards a game than 252 yards in that season. And as Scuzz will say, yards are not everything.
Yards don't tell the entire story, but the point is still valid.
The raw numbers the raw numbers sting the nostrils, and this offense simply isn't gaining yardage at a level that really, if you look at, again, the 252 yards a game we're putting up against those 10 FBS teams, you're lucky if you have one team a season that hits a number that low in college football. And it's bizarre. It's bizarre because there have been so many times this season when, we'll get into it, because I know Scuzz, like, you will quibble with where this sits relative to these other.
Let's just go there.
Go ahead. I'll just cede you the floor, Scuzz.
Yeah, so I'm an efficiency guy. So for me, it's about yards per attempt. It's about yards per play. It's about, like, yards per game has a bunch of variables in it that certainly are within one's control, but don't necessarily speak to whether an offense is good or not. And let's be clear, we're arguing about, like, the lower decks this is a debate between, like, the 7th and 8th levels of hell.
You can definitely consider this gallows humor, at least in part, because we don't know what else to
moving around the deck chairs on the Titanic, if you will.
Yeah, but
like
there is, I don't know, like this is in service of, I think, what we think some of the potential solutions are, right? So what I'm going to tell you is, I don't care how many yards per game we gained. I care about the efficiency of the offense, and we ran more than 10 additional plays per game back in 2019 than we did this year. Yards per play that year total 4.2. We're at 4.5 this year. 2022 was also 4.5. But let's be honest. What we all care about is wins and points. We're scoring more points than we did in 19 and in 2022. Barely, I agree.
It's roughly equivalent between us and 19, yeah.
But the biggest difference is, so this is a little bit of the eye of the beholder. And John, I think you and I are at least in some similar territory here, but like in 2019, Northwestern was good at running the ball. The last game of the year against Illinois, they basically abandoned the pass entirely.
Better at running the ball.
Better at running the ball. Yes. Well, and they had of the last 4 games of the year, they ran for 251 yards against Purdue, 334 yards against UMass, 128 against Minnesota, and 378 against Illinois. And they won 2 of those 3 games. They almost beat Purdue. So by the end of the season, they had at least zoned in on, what they could do. That year was an abject total failure from a quarterback position. But what have we been talking about with Mick McCall and the offense for 6 years prior?
Predictability.
Not just predictability, but you can't be boring vanilla, run the ball all the time on first and second down, and then try to pass your way out of trouble. And they were a team that would not attack downfield, could not attack downfield, whether that's based on offensive line talent, wide receiver talent, coaching the quarterbacks, whatever it is, whatever the reason, it's a structural problem that they didn't address over many, 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 many seasons. And that, even if we were decent at running the ball by the end of that season and getting more yards per game, we all viewed that offense as a Neanderthalic version of football that just was not going to be competitive going forward. And that's why Mick McCall lost his job. The upside, if there is any, when you compare that to where we were this season, is that the rushing numbers are abysmal. 3.3 yards per carry, less than 100 yards per game. Just horrific. I think, we've talked a bit about how Lujan's teams at South Dakota deployed much larger running backs, like Cam Porter plus, and certainly in the recent years had better offensive line talent. We knew especially depth we knew there was talent on the offensive line, but depth on the offensive line was a big concern going into this year, and we had a ton of injuries, and that borne out with snaps and fumbles and blocking assignments and all sorts of other stuff. So there's some structural stuff here as well, but those rushing numbers are horrible. From a passing perspective, 173 yards per game is not great, but when you compare it against 117 in 2019, and then you frame that successful offense in 2024 is throwing the ball downfield, is attacking downfield, you think about, like, this offense has been able to do that at times against all the teams that they've played. Consistently, always successfully, no. But can you, like, that 2019 team, I don't know that they threw a pass more than 12 yards downfield all season. So again, this is an optics thing, I think, a little bit. And again, we're talking about like the 7th and 8th circles of hell here and comparing them. Right. But in terms of, like, when you think about what we do going forward, there are, and we've said it all season, there are components to this offense that like we are tearing our hair out, not understanding the decisions that they are making moment to moment. But, like, people, please, like, hear us when we tell you, these coaches are not morons. They are not super tenured at this level. And that is a real thing that we can talk about. But they are not idiots. They understand the game of football and they understand how to call plays. They're not just like throwing a dart at a dartboard. They've had success at this in the past. For whatever reason, they've become completely unmoored in the back half of this season. And I think
that's the thing. I think the season has gotten away from them like it's gotten away from everyone. Like this season just ran away from them. And again, we're not giving them a pass here. And we're certainly not, like, as you're all familiar on Twitter, and we were talking about this before the pod, like we spent all this time going over the tape being like the QB draw was the only thing that seemed to work for us against Ohio State, and that it could maybe be the basis for something, and then we literally didn't run that play. And in terms of like why we didn't run it against Michigan even one time, I don't have an answer. I don't understand.
It is really confusing why in a game where you are struggling with pressure, you're getting pressured all the time, that you don't execute some draws. I don't think they even threw any running back screens, or very few. And it just, like, I get that Michigan's front four is good. I get that their defensive tackles are really good. But it seems like we found something that worked a little bit against Ohio State and then didn't even try it once. And everything else we tried was also failing. What the hell? Like, what were we thinking?
Like what was to be lost, etc. And I mean, again, like I think that's where we come back to this idea that, again, it's so easy. First of all, it's so easy to be like, this is Lujan's fault, and it's like, I'm not absolving him, but again,
it's like everyone.
Like Scott said, efficiency was efficiency, but in losses this season, 7 losses. This team is gaining 210.8 yards a game in those losses. Efficiency or whatever, like there's, in the past 50 years, there are probably not more than 5 teams that are putting up those yardage numbers in losses. It's literally so unbelievably low, and it's just like, there's no one cause for a situation like this. Yep, Lujan's got his hands on it, but I mean, it's everything. And again, we've talked about this before, and like the complexities of how this all, but this season just ran away from these guys. Like it just got away from them. In Lujan's case, like this all just went out the window in the worst way. But it's funny, like we talk about this delay draw thing, and maybe this is part of it where it goes back to, like, so we were talking, in addition to our discussion, we were having a discussion with someone I won't name here, but someone in the Northwestern community that a lot of you know well and are very familiar with, who took a line similar to Scuzz. And although his reasoning was less about the efficiency numbers and more just like, I remember how 2019 felt. I remember how 2022 felt. This doesn't feel like that. And that's the weird thing. And, we talked about whiplash between the Michigan, the field hockey and football in Ann Arbor. Like, I'm feeling whiplash where it's like, I'm looking at the stats, and the stats are telling me that this team, from a raw yardage perspective, is going to depths that few teams ever go to, even in Northwestern history in the past 50 years. And yet a week ago, I'm on the pod mapping you out a path where I'm like, look, if we can just do this, and look how successful we were. I mean, this team went 92 yards against the best defense in the country a week ago on one drive where it all seemed like it worked. And it's like, we've talked about this all season long, and Scuzz mentioned it earlier, where it's like, it ain't hard to look at all the good pieces, right?
And I think that's like the most frustrating part, though.
Yes.
You see flashes. Like there are glimpses, and like we did not see that in 2019. Like there were no flashes, there were no glimpses, but like there were times this, and we're talking about this season like it's over. There is the game on Saturday that we'll wait and see what happens. Like we're not writing the we're not writing the funeral dirge for the season just yet, but still
2019 capped it with a great win over Illinois.
That's true.
Yeah.
But like Coco Azuma running for whatever he ran for in that Illinois game was definitely a flash.
Right.
Oh, for sure. But like you saw instances where things were coming together. The Maryland game, the first half against Ohio State, like a lot of the game against Ohio State. there were flat, like you could see a path. And like last week, you were saying it, John. Like you saw a path. It's like tantalizingly close. There are things that need to change, without a doubt. There are things that need to change, and now's not the time to be going into the nitty gritties on what happened. Like there's still a lot. I think I'm so interested to see after the season is over, to see if we ever get more more
the
of an
Mike Wright
explanation.
piece of it. Yeah.
The Mike Wright of it all. I mean, for starters, but like if we ever get more explanation on things that may have happened. I get, like middle of the season, you're not going to talk about this stuff. Okay, fine. I wish you would, but you're not. Okay. I cannot wait to hear the end of the season press conference and see if there's any more discussion given to some of these questions that we've had.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, the offseason is going to be an interesting situation because I'll be honest, like, as tantalizingly close as some things have felt during the course of this year, I think what is most galling, none of us expected this to be a 10-win season.
No.
None of us expected it to be an 8-win season. We were looking for 6 and looking for a foundation to build on from last year. The success of Braun's first season, the adrenaline that was last year, can you distill that down into something more solid and build yourself a launching pad from, in the second season? And for the first time in God knows how long, produce 2 decent seasons in a row, because the Northwestern has not experienced that since 2017 to 2018. And even before that, all the really good seasons it's hard to have a great season after another great season. That's just not typically how it works. But most of the time, our great seasons have been followed by awful seasons. And here we are again. And as tantalizingly close as some of the things have been throughout the course of the year, I do not feel like we have a great foundation to build on as we go into next year. We don't have what looks to be a developing, growing quarterback. Like Lausch has not improved over the last 5 or 6 weeks, and that could very much be a product of just a bad mix of OC, QB, O-line, competition, etc. But it doesn't feel good right now. Same thing on the O-line. We know some pieces are moving on. We're really excited about so many of the guys that are here. I'm worried about guys that might transfer out because, when you get system changes, that often happens. And it just, I fear that we are going back to ground zero next year and we are starting from scratch. And that's what most sucks about this season to me.
Especially in this day and age where you can just go. Like,
right.
Anyone who wants to go can go. There are no transfer rules anymore. You want out, you can go out.
And regardless of and I mean, you're absolutely right. But just from a strictly graduation perspective, I mean, again, I've been looking at the stats just because of this morbid curiosity and all these comparisons that we've been using for the basis for this discussion, right? There's a really good chance that aside from a quarterback, the top 2 yardage getters on this team will not be rushers. They will be Bryce Kurtz's receiving yards followed by A.J. Henning's receiving yards. And both of those players are gone this coming year. So it's like this is where we are. I think from a big picture perspective too, and this discussion that we are talking about, and again, this rearranging the deck chairs like Sam was saying, and we're talking about really in the past 40 years, if we're looking at the 4 or 5 worst offensive seasons for Northwestern football, 3 of them, and again, your mileage varies on which is the worst, but 3 of them are 2019, 2022, 2024. That's 3 of the past 5 seasons with 3 different offensive coordinators. And there's a piece that is the current landscape and where Northwestern fits in it from an offensive perspective is something that has to get straightened out. And Braun, I think, in his press conference on Monday, the way he's talking about it, he's very aware. I mean, he's very conscious of, just as we all are, of this thing of just playing transfer portal whack-a-mole with a quarterback and hoping that you hit, and bringing one in every year, and that not being sustainable. But he also was like, we're evaluating the entire two deep, and we're going to have to find creative ways to get players to fill out that two deep if we feel like there's not, like, he gets it, and they're trying to find a situation right now. But it's rough, and maybe it's not rough in terms of, like, again, like Scuzz was saying, 2019, where we're all so sick of that stubborn approach and the losses are piling up and we're not seeing any changes. And that for a lot of people, a situation like that where it's like, you're just like, it's so stubborn, it's just the same thing every week and every week and every week. And then you have a season like this where it's like every week something different seems to go wrong, and approaches are changing and players are going in and out. But then there's us being like, man, look, if this just worked and this just worked and this just worked. And then 11 games into the season, you look back and you look at the raw numbers and they absolutely scorch your nostrils. And it's like, where, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, people are going to look back at these numbers and be like, oh my gosh. And we're going to be like, yeah, but in the moment, see, at different times, it seemed like things could work, and it's like,
we are not the only folks that thought that Northwestern could give Michigan a game this past weekend. I mean, that was a common perception across like I listened to a number of different college football podcasts, like studio shows, the announcers of our game, like everyone was suggesting like we thought this was going to be a tight game, and some of that was,
and it was for a while.
Well, for a little bit, but like some of that was Northwestern face planting on offense, and some of that was like Michigan really coming alive on offense and taking advantage of RD, which didn't play particularly great either. So, I like it again. I just this is tough sledding right now, and I don't have I don't really have any interest in sugarcoating it. We are in scraping the bottom of the barrel here, and I hope these guys can muster up some energy and some fight for Illinois, our hated rival.
And this is an Illinois team that they gave up 7 points against the Michigan team that put up 50 on us. I mean,
these are different teams,
sure,
but Illinois is real and they're good. This is a lot better than an Illinois team that we played at the end of 19 for sure, and they're better coached. They have better talent, etc. So. We'll see what happens, but I think like the feeling of scraping the bottom of the barrel is real tough. It's a tough pill to swallow right now, but it's the reality. And yeah, John, it's like every week something goes wrong, and then we seem to like not correct it or not address it or try to like pivot away from it in a strange way, and it either like I don't know, like it doesn't feel like we've actually solved any of the problems as we've gone on. We've just kind of shifted focus and then hit new problems.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a thing too. And I think like the fact that after Purdue, everyone immediately circled the Michigan game 3 weeks from now and was like, this is the one, man. This is going to be the litmus test. And then for it to go the way that it went was horrific. And I think this has definitely been a theme for us this season. We've mentioned it a couple of times because we get feedback like this and we're conscious of it. And it's not like, I wouldn't say it's not something that bothers us, but we're conscious of the fact that there are people in our listening community who are like, you guys have your rose-colored glasses on a ton of the time. And first of all, it's like, as we've said a million times, we make no apologies for this. Like, we're fans first. And like, we always, like last week, I'm like, look, this delay draw thing, maybe it can just come together. And if we can just not make all the mistakes and everything. And for my we can just not make all the mistakes thing, I have no like basis for that other than I really just want it to happen. But that's the way we feel about this team. But in that context, I'm very conscious looking at this season that the numbers are so wild that everyone's going to be like, and then, from wins and losses, people are going to be like, at the end of the day, our 2 Big Ten wins. I mean, again, the cart before the horse. I know we still have to play Illinois, but as of right now, the other 2 of the 3 worst teams in the Big Ten, our 2 conference wins are against the other 2. And there are a lot of people who are going to be like, look, this team gained no yards, had no significant conference wins, beat up on an FCS team, and that was it. And you guys were talking us through it every week. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, all we can do is like look at the pieces, and there just is so much exciting stuff here. And there are so many times when things could have gone completely different than they did, and I think we'll believe that. While at the same time acknowledging that everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and that at the end of the day, this was just a team that could not do things offensively, and yeah, and we don't know exactly where we're going to go from here offensively, and yeah, it is what it is.
The ups and downs and wild swings of this season have really been something too, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there was momentum and cautious optimism coming off of Miami, and then
Neither 2019 nor 2022 had a game in the middle of the year remotely like Maryland.
well, and that for Maryland to come on the heels of Indiana,
Right.
and then for us a week later to play arguably our worst game of the year against Wisconsin. To me, that is like, especially seeing them get rolled by Nebraska this past weekend. I just think of the games we lost beyond Duke, the Wisconsin game is the one that just stands out like a sore thumb. I mean, we know that shouldn't have been a 20-point margin just because of what happened in that game, but we also played like dog shit. And I like, for that to happen in a home game, the last game at home in our home stadium, which, yeah, it was weird, etc., but should have afforded Northwestern ample advantages. It's such a strange dichotomy. What happened in those 8 days? And teams go up and down all the time, right? But to come off of your best game, did they just get overconfident? Did they let down? Like, it's a really weird and hard to explain letdown spot, frankly. For it to have gone so poorly against Wisconsin, and that's from a coaching perspective too. That's not just the players, right? There's like the bananas calls during the first half of that game, in the shadow of the goalpost, etc. But even before that, right? Like, you get the excitement of EIU with Lausch, and is this something we can build from? And then what the game at Washington is just an absolute catastrophic failure. You come back 2 weeks later to play this incandescent Indiana team and give them a hell of a game, probably the best game anybody's given them until they went up against Ohio. Well, until they went up against Ohio State and Michigan,
right?
So it's been such an up and down, like a wild, dramatic up and down swing of the pendulum throughout the course of the year. In addition to all the other things that you talked about, John, it's just like it is hard to wrap your head around it.
Well, and the other maddening thing about that too is we're not the only ones who have been going through that in the Big Ten. I mean, you can argue that aside from the top 5 teams, and that's including Illinois at the 5 spot, every other one of the 13 teams in this conference has lost the plot at some point in this season. Some teams like Iowa have regained it a little faster than others, but Iowa has a couple like games where they just got smoked this season.
But it feels like everyone else went through like they went through a dip, right? Like Rutgers went through a dip and then kind of came back up. It feels like we've gone through like 3 separate distinct dips.
Right. And that's the thing. It's like, it's all the more maddening, right? Because it's like, we kind of said going into the season, we're like, look, people are talking about this strong schedule, and we're looking at a lot of mediocre teams here and being like, and then as the season progressed, that only became more emphatic, where it's like, as we said multiple times, it's like, we don't have to be good. We just have to be better than this team in this week, given all the dips that are going on in this conference. And like, at the end of the day, it just didn't happen. Like, our 2 conference wins, as things currently stand, are against 2 teams that are almost certainly going to fire their coaches when the season ends. And it stinks. I mean, again, it is what it is. Again, we'll never make apologies for always trying to see the best and always looking for the best possibility, but the numbers are brutal, and the way that it came about and the inconsistencies and everything, I mean, we get it, and it's historically bad, and yeah, we're going to have to find a way through it. And, like, with a new AD and a new building coming in a year and all those things that pretends and everything, like, Northwestern's going to have to find a path.
Is there anything specific about this Illinois game that we should take a look at? I mean, I feel like we've talked about it enough. I mean, we kind of talked about it on a larger scale thing, but is there anything specifically that you guys want to see, this weekend against Illinois?
I mean, I don't know if it's want to see so much as just like pointing out, like, this is not the Illinois of yesteryear. This is a team that is more of a passing team than a running team.
That's what I was going to say.
It kind of breaks the typical Brett Bielema mold. Luke Altmaier has been incredible this year. Like the improvement that he has had from last year to this season is wild. 20 touchdowns and 3 picks. Last year, this guy was an interception machine. He threw 10 against 13 TDs. This year, he's already attempted 38 more passes, and he has only 3 interceptions. His completion percent is a little bit lower, but he's getting much better yards per attempt, like with his depth of target, etc. So, like, he's having an incredible season, like across the board in every potential way. And a lot of that is his wide receivers have just jumped out. Pat Bryant is, I mean, like, they were stumping for him to be a Bolitnikoff nominee. Those lists are all made at the beginning of the year, and he wasn't on anybody's radar really. But dude's probably going to get to 1,000 yards. Probably going to have double-digit TDs, assuming he catches one against us. This guy was a solid medium contributor the last couple of years for Illinois. He was their leading receiver last year with like 560 yards, but he's almost doubled his production with hardly more catches. Like this team has gotten dramatically better on the offensive side of the ball. And sure, they still run the ball and the defense is all right. Nothing to like shout home about, but like it's wild, the transformation and how unexpected it was. And that's not just coming from some Northwestern fans. That's across the board.
Yeah. And the other thing about Altmaier too, and it's like, you got to call it like we see it. It's not just the numbers are good overall. He's been clutch. This is a team that has played close games. And yes, that includes Purdue, but this team beat a Kansas team that at the time that they won, it looked like a big deal. About a month later, it looked like no big deal at all and a total mirage. Now it looks like a big deal again because Kansas is, what are they, 4-6 or 5-6? I think they're 5-6
now, but
they're one of the best 5-6 teams in history.
knocking off undefeated BYU, knocking off Colorado with a chance to get to the Big 12 championship game.
So this is, I mean, like Kansas in week 11 and Kansas in week 2 when Illinois played them are different teams.
Sure.
They have a lot of talent, but they were a team that couldn't get out of their own way and couldn't figure it out in week 2. So, like, yeah, that wasn't that great of a win. I'll tell you what's impressive to me is coming back from multiple scores down at Rutgers this past weekend. I mean, it looked like Illinois was dead in this game. They scored 23 points in the fourth quarter to win this game by a touchdown.
And that's the point of the bit. And this is against good Rutgers, not Rutgers from like 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is the kind of stupid season this has been in the Big Ten. Rutgers started the season good, then totally lost the plot in the middle of the season. They were barely functioning as a football team and then somehow got it back, got bowl eligible, and that's the team that Illinois beat. Illinois beat a good Rutgers team. And again, it's bizarre how this happened. But yeah, and again, in a incredibly clutch way. And that's the kind of team that they've been this season. And that's why they're, 10 wins is on the table for this Illinois team still 100%. So it's rough. And frankly, I forget what the spread was. Is it like 7.5, 8.5?
7.5.
I was kind of shocked that it's that low, frankly. And again, I know Illinois has played a ton of tight football games this season. Like, I get it, but it's two teams that are moving in polar opposite directions right now. So I don't know. I mean, again, it's our rival. And as Scuzz said, in 2019, this was a much worse Illinois team, but we did find a way against all odds to pull out a big win against our rival that year. So maybe it can happen again.
Well, the thing about spreads is, and the thing about, margin of victory, et cetera, it can be an illusion. Michigan beat us by 20 more points than Ohio State did, and they are 21-point dogs to Ohio State. So,
right, yeah, it's true. I mean, again, there's the overarching feeling though, that this is, we are not moving in the right direction here. And I think you can almost, it's funny listening to Braun's press conference. In some ways, you listen to some of the things that he's saying, and he's talking about addressing the depth chart, and he's talking about ways we're going to have to get creative. And there's almost even a part of you that's been like, well, we got a game to play first. And it's like he is nothing if not a straight shooter, David Braun. And he tells you what he thinks, and he very much gets the lay of the land, and he very much gets what they're going to have to do. And he's very much looking and being like, yeah, we have to play one more game this season against our rivals, do our best to get a win, and then we've got a million problems that we've got to address in the offseason.
So, this is the last game of the year. Again, infinitesimally small odds of a bowl game, but, for all intents and purposes, this is the last game of the year. Senior day at Wrigley Field, obviously not exactly where you want to be doing your senior day. It's not, in front of your home team. I mean, I can't imagine that the crowd different. Well, actually, I don't know that. I was going to say I can't imagine that the crowd differential is going to be the same as it was against Ohio State. But how many Northwestern fans are going to be going to this?
Yeah, we
this
will
weekend?
see.
Who knows? But I mean, you look at the senior class, and the guys who are playing their last game for Northwestern, and you think about what they had to go through.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, with COVID and with last year and just everything, and you really want to see them go out on a high note. This has not been a great year, but if we're able to kind of send our seniors off with a win, send them off with the hat, that'd be at least something to salvage out of this season.
Yeah, I think you kind of said it, and you make a great point with COVID too. I mean, truly, these older guys, I mean, you look at a guy like Coco, who again has been here, I think this is his fifth or his sixth year maybe, and a bunch of the guys who've been here 5 years, like a Cam Porter, etc. We're right. You're like COVID, and then everything that happened with just the whole hazing situation and like the turnover, and we're just so conscious, particularly of that situation, of just how absolutely horrific that time was for all of these players and all of their families. And there are so many guys who are going to be playing their last football game this season at Wrigley against Illinois, where we will always separate what those guys had to go through and our feelings for them and our feelings for their families and just concern for them, and feeling like those were experiences that no college athlete should ever have to go to. And of course, like, not separating this at all from like the victims and all of those things. It's like you can and should feel really bad for every Northwestern athlete on all sides of this and everything that they were involved with. And that 100% extends to all of these guys who are seniors or are going to be playing their last game at Wrigley. And all of these guys were just like, what they had to go through and how hard it was, and the stuff that they had to deal with online, and the stuff their families had to experience, and just the decisions that they all had to make and everything like that. We will always carry a soft spot in our heart for all of these guys that again are about to play their final game. Always. The guy, a guy like a Carmine Bastone, a guy like a Coco, a guy like a Cam Porter, right? All of them, and on and on and on. And a guy like A.J. Henning, who transferred and then made the decision to stay, right? And I think I'm so happy that those guys got to have that magical season last year. And right, like Sam said, I'm so bummed for them that it didn't go that way for them this year. But I hope, that they all understand how much we all appreciate what they all went through, and how glad we are that they at least had that one magical season that, that they'll always remember, even if this one didn't go the way that they wanted it to.
If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients. No fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group, compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation, and go Cats. So with that, let's kind of look around the conference from last week. Coming up for this week is rivalry week, but some interesting games last weekend. There's a lot of positioning. Moving toward the playoff. This whole playoff situation and how the Bulls are gonna relate to it is just a very, very fascinating thing to see. And I'm very interested to see how teams who don't make the playoff treat that. But that's a discussion for further future pod. But just kind of
I will say briefly, since you brought this topic up.
Yeah.
I certainly thought that the expanded playoff would be a detriment to the regular season, and it has been the opposite.
Agreed completely.
There are some games that have been. I mean, Indiana, Ohio State last week was an example. Now, of course, an appearance in the Big Ten championship game was on the line, but it's the type of game that you thought that the playoff would have kind of made moot. Like, well, this game doesn't matter. Well, guess what? Both those teams are probably into the playoff regardless of the outcome of that game, and they care immensely about it for a whole host of reasons. So it's great to see that hasn't happened. Now, I am hopeful that bowls will still matter, even with the playoff. That people will still be interested in them and attend to them, and that teams will want to go to them, etc. But we'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, you're right. Like, I'm sure, like, for a team like Alabama, if they don't get in, whatever bowl they end up with, I'm sure, for a team like that, being on the outside of the playoff looking in will carry it. But, I mean, that's not where my mind is at all. I mean, I'm so pumped. Boise State has been in this weird situation because the Big 12 champion, hypothetical champion's current low ranking, that Boise's been sitting there with a bye for like a couple of weeks, right? They're like the de facto 4 seed in the hypothetical playoff right now. And that's so great for the profile of a program like that, right? Like these small conference schools where they're just getting talked about in the playoff conversation week after week after week, not excluded. Anytime someone's talking about the future, the postseason of football, Boise gets mentioned. And that's really cool. And then, of course, Indiana, I think like Arizona State right now is in the current projection, right? Like an SMU. Like, that's just really cool. And hopefully Indiana is evidence that there will be, a team or two who pop up every year who are like, hey, we didn't see this team coming, but now they're positioned to maybe get into the playoff as like an 11 and a 12 seed. And that's great. That's what that's what I think we always hoped we'd get out of this. So we're getting a very good looking iteration of the playoff in the first year. I guess what SEC fans maybe would disagree, but I don't care about that.
No one, don't care.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, and maybe, down the road it'll just be that many more bites at the apple for your Georgias and your Alabamas, etc. But not this year. This year it's looking pretty good. So yeah, big win for the playoffs so far.
So this past weekend, you had Michigan State beating Purdue 24-17. Michigan State now sits at 5-6, 1 win away from bowl eligibility.
We need you to lose, Michigan State. You're one of the 10.
Pretty impressive for their Jonathan Smith's first season. I think this would be considered overachieving with what all the stuff they were dealing with coming into the year.
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
Agreed.
Yeah. The aforementioned Indiana-Ohio State game. I mean,
God, how triggering was this, guys? I mean, Indiana's first half looked almost carbon copy to Northwestern's first half against Ohio State. And I will say the thing that really stood out, and this was not evident when we played Ohio State, but on the first drive, Curtis Rourke just had all the time in the world to throw. Ohio State brought 4 and hardly ever more, and he had no problem just carving them apart on the back end. Well, and of course they adjusted. They started bringing pressure, and it's like Indiana didn't prepare for Ohio State to adjust and bring pressure. It's like they had no awareness or ability to deal with just free rushers. Didn't it for whatever reason they couldn't get the ball out. quickly. They weren't getting the right plays called. I mean, they came completely unglued, and that was the end of the game. So unfortunately, this was not the back and forth affair that we had hoped, and frankly that it should have been. And I'm not saying that like Indiana, shat the bed or something in terms of like, sometimes this happens where you get beat by an opponent, etc. But it's one I think they really wish they would have back. That they would have prepared differently.
I will say too, like it's good that I think they got dropped a bunch of spots in the playoff, but they are very much right still in the playoff, and that a lot of people are also giving Ohio State credit for being like, look, Ohio State looks really good right now, and I think putting more of it on Ohio State than Indiana, which is good.
Yep, it is good.
Yeah. Penn State goes to Minnesota and comes away with a 1-point win, 26-25.
Yeah. It's funny. This is my instinct. I actually had this discussion with someone at the place where we were watching the game because the instinct is like we almost got a James Franklin special here. But as Scuzz has astutely pointed out before, the fact that this isn't the kind of game that is a James Franklin special is why James Franklin still has a job. You can't lose to the two other good teams in your conference every single flipping year and lose games like this and still have a job. He finds a way to win these games somehow. But yeah, Lord have mercy.
I mean, this just felt like Minnesota had Penn State stopped.
Yep.
They had them 4th and 1 in their own territory. Maybe it was 4th and 6. I can't remember. They had them 4th and something in their own territory. And, but it felt like one of those like, oh gosh, might they go for it? Like on third down, I think Penn State did something rather conservative. Maybe they threw the ball. I forget what they did on third down, but the announcer's like, whoa, that was really surprising. I like usually James Franklin is more aggressive in these situations, something like that. And alarm bells went off in my head. I was like, yeah, you're right. He's probably going for it here on 4th down. This is going to be a fake punt. And Minnesota was completely unaware. And they just completely whiffed on it. I think Penn State ran for 30 yards on the play. They converted another 4th down after that. Like it just, they ran out the clock on them. And the Gophers, who had settled for a field goal on their final drive with 5 some minutes to go. Maybe that wasn't their final drive, but point being, like, Gophers have 2 games now at Michigan and home against Penn State that they coulda, shoulda, maybe woulda won if just like a hair thing had gone differently for them. And
not to mention that North Carolina game at the start of the season, which is very much the same thing.
That too.
We talked a little bit about Illinois beating Rutgers, but
we heaped a lot of plaudits on Illinois. It's worth mentioning Rutgers basically had this game won, and Illinois found a way to pull it out.
Not really.
A 40-yard touchdown with 4 seconds left.
Okay.
Down by 1.
Right.
14 seconds to play and no timeouts. And
I mean they pulled it out. I mean, but again,
it wasn't like the Commanders against the Cowboys this past weekend, but
no, and I mean, and Illinois was, and again, it's credit to Illinois and the way that they executed. This was a crazy close game, and that's again why the spread in our game is so low. But Rutgers practically had them, but again, Illinois finds a way to win. Like they were not rattled, and they did what they needed to do.
Iowa goes on the road to Maryland, wins 29-13.
Aside from Purdue, Maryland is the team that has packed it in. We're just running out the clock with that team right now.
Do we even have to talk about this next one? I can't. I can't. Nebraska beats Wisconsin 44-25.
Dana Holgerson, greater than, I don't know who Wisconsin installed as their OC, but By Wisconsin standards, like
they got 25 points.
Look, they had a pretty good game. Braden Locke
Yeah.
threw for almost 300. You had 3 touchdowns, only 1 pick. They averaged 4.6 yards on the ground, and it just wasn't good enough because they got absolutely steamrolled on the other side of the ball.
I mean, you really did get the feeling this season that Nebraska, like that it was almost like they were trying to slay a dragon here. Like that there's this curse that, I mean, to our endless amusement and source of joy, that there was just this thing that Nebraska was Nebraskaing and that they were just not going to get over it. So they're going to bowl now for the first time in a million billion years.
8 years.
Yeah.
But you know what? These 8 years have changed them forever. And you know how I know that? Because Nebraska fans rushed the field for their 6th win over a 5-5 or 5-6 Wisconsin team. Yes, they did.
They rushed the field.
Yeah, so we'll see.
And I don't really like. I don't mind rushing the field, but like Nebraska of 2024 would never.
Right. This is Nebraska.
Or Nebraska of 2004 is what I tried.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
It's the second time I've done that. God damn it! Why can't I get years right?
Nebraska is a legendary powerhouse volleyball school who is now trying to turn the page on football, and we'll see what they can do. We'll see. They'll see if this bowl game makes a difference or not.
And then USC beats UCLA 19-13.
They almost had them.
Yeah.
So, but I mean USC, Lordy. I mean, like you go talk about it's in some bizarre ways. I mean, we talked about this, that by far the top performing quarterback across both of these two teams is currently sitting in the transfer portal right now.
Yep.
And USC in a bizarre funhouse mirror version of us is a team that is so light years beyond what they thought they were going to be, 6 or 7 weeks ago. And is kind of just ghost walking through the rest of the season. But UCLA, props to them though. My expectation for them was like 1 or 2 wins, and I don't know what they have right now, but they've acquitted themselves well. Yeah, 4. Deshaun Foster, like that guy deserves a pat on the back. Talk about overachieving, not unlike Michigan State. This guy's overachieving, especially with this schedule.
Yeah. Looking nationally, who was it who was saying that Jalen Milroe was going to be a shoo-in for the Heisman?
Well, I mean, I
man.
didn't say he was going to be a shoo-in for the Heisman. I just expected him to continue to put up incredible stats, and then he didn't.
It's amazing.
Kind of inexplicably.
It is amazing where now I'm like, who gets the third invite? Howard maybe?
Or Gabriel.
Or Gabriel. Or both, right? But I mean, Milroe has somehow, to your point, after that LSU game, we were all like, well, he's either winning or he's, going to bet, and then found a way to totally blow that up. Holy cow. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at this stage, like, he's got 2,400 passing yards. He's got a lot more rushing yards. Let's see, where are his rushing yards? 615 rushing yards. Not as much as I would have thought.
Still a huge
He's
number,
got
though. Yeah.
17 rushing touchdowns, but only 15 passing touchdowns and 9 picks.
I think also there's
three of them this past weekend.
I feel like
Yeah.
there's the feeling too that people will be like, if Alabama gets a Heisman finalist in a year where they didn't even make the playoff, like what are we even doing? Like,
But I'm like,
there's
he should have. I mean, Oklahoma's a crap team. He should have thrown for 3 touchdowns and had 0 picks this past weekend. So we'd be talking about an 18-6 guy
Right.
with over 2,500 yards passing, closing in on 800, 900 for the year on the ground with close to 20 rushing TDs, with some big ass wins over. I mean, like, those aren't like eye popping stats, but I just man, what a collapse by Alabama.
yeah.
And, a bunch of other SEC teams also, collapsed.
Indeed.
Florida, Ole Miss loses to Florida.
Yep.
That's a big one.
A&M losing in
A&M.
4 OTs, was it?
Oh my God!
Auburn?
Can we talk about Elko just for a sec?
What was it?
No, you saw the press conference leading
Yep.
up to that game, right?
Yep.
I definitely texted it to you guys, where he's like, someone asked, "Are you overlooking Auburn? Are you looking ahead to Texas?" And he's like, "We are solely focused on Texas. Auburn."
That's right.
And Auburn's like, "Okay, sure, let's go."
It's crazy that they lost this game. It just means more, guys. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you.
It just means more losses.
I was going to also hearty congratulations to this year's winner of the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, Notre Dame, who absolutely massacred ranked Army and Navy teams. And basically, just as we said they were going to. Those two teams, again, I love me some option football. I love me some service academy football, but a lot of this had to do with the current state of the conference that those two teams play in right now. They are not remotely on the level of Notre Dame. And Notre Dame, what are they, like 5th in the playoff rankings right now? And it's like there is Notre Dame versus NIU, and there is Notre Dame in every other game. It's hilarious.
Yep. Well, and they get to play USC, and man, doesn't USC wish they had Miller Moss for this matchup?
Oh yeah,
right.
Warning to the wise: benching your starting quarterback can leave you in a tough situation where you don't have a lot of quarterback options.
So true. Any other games from last weekend that worth mentioning, or should we look ahead to this week?
BYU Arizona was bananas.
Was the only one.
That
was the
absolutely
most lunatic thing I've ever seen. Because there was a game, wasn't it earlier in the season? Didn't Auburn have a I think it was Auburn had a premature. No, Ole Miss had a premature field storming, where they had to usher them all back off the field.
All I know is this: Sam and I went to a game at Arizona State. This is arguably the number 1 or number 2 party school in the United States of America.
It's true. Yeah.
Getting those fans off the field, no easy task.
Right. They were, it was just lunacy. And I find it in a situation like this, and Ole Miss was the same, but especially with Arizona State, it very much has the feel of trying to turn like the Titanic away from the iceberg. Whereas by the time everyone realizes that there is still a second left on the clock and this game is very much going to continue, only like a quarter of the fans are on the field, and you're like, oh, but it's too late. Now they're all just going to come down.
Did you watch the end of this, though?
Yeah, they kind of herded them off to the side.
No, before this.
No, not even that.
The drive that led up to this situation.
Oh, yeah.
Because this was frankly karmic. It was 2nd and goal at the BYU 3-yard line.
Right.
And Arizona State went backwards.
Right.
First, Sam Levitt ran backwards for 26 yards.
Wait, what?
Then he ran backwards for another 10. Then they took 2 delays of game to give him extra space. And then they snapped the ball with 7 seconds left in the game. And the plan was just throw it high up in the air, and by the time it comes down, the clock will have expired.
And
that's what he did. But he didn't even he took like a 2-step drop and heaved it. He could have run backwards like 5 yards or taken a 7-step drop and heaved it or something.
That's
and he
what
didn't do any of that.
I was like, you have the entire field behind you to play with. I'm like, what are you doing? Right.
And I think this is why Kenny Dillingham was so angry. I mean, he's like, it's a miracle that Dillingham did not get a 15-yard penalty in this moment, which would have given BYU the ball at like at the Arizona State 35, and they could have gone for a desperation long field goal. But he was incensed, and I think it's because he felt like the math was impeccable and like there was no way this couldn't have worked out. But like, I'm sorry, dude, this is karmic. You had 1st and goal. You had 2nd and goal at the 3-yard line. Just run it up the middle.
Right.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah. That was absolutely great. And then the thing is, just like both of those, the problem that happens is if they've stormed it once, you know you're going to get them off the field. and you're going to have to herd them off. But as always happens in these situations, happens with hoops too. The second storming happens in like 2 seconds. So that's like the flip side is, most likely BYU's not going to get this Hail Mary. And then those guys are going to get absolutely swarmed at a level that didn't happen the first time. And it is what it is. And BYU's head coach was super classy about it after the game and like took the high road all the way. And like that was impressive.
At least in football, the players are encased in armor.
Yeah.
In basketball, and I know there was the whole like silly Duke scene last year, but like you don't want a bunch of people like trampling a player, and that's not to say that a football player couldn't get hurt in something like that, but like oh man, that was a wild scene.
Yep.
So this weekend in the Big Ten, you got the Friday games. It's Thanksgiving week, so there's a lot of football going on. You've got Minnesota, Wisconsin on Friday at 11 a.m. on CBS. Wisconsin is a 2-point home favorite.
Which is the team? Is one of these teams 5-6, or are they both 6-5?
Wisconsin is 5-6. Minnesota is 6-5.
So I mean, you probably were rooting for Minnesota anyway, but root for Minnesota, like theoretically, help us hit this 10-team parlay. We have to hit.
Minnesota won the last time they were in Madison, and I kind of like them to do it again. We'll see what happens. This is this game is. Wisconsin won it every year forever, and then I think 3 of the last 5, Minnesota's kind of gotten up off the mat. But they've been the much more consistent and effective team this year, even though they've lost a couple at the buzzer.
You got Friday night on NBC, 6:30 p.m. Nebraska at Iowa. Iowa a 6-point home favorite.
I mean, you could definitely make an argument that Caleb Johnson should get a trip to the Heisman ceremony. I know that the numbers aren't the same, but him lugging Iowa on his back week after week after week, and they're going to win either 7 or 8 games this season. So I don't know how they do it, but Iowa's going to Iowa.
How'd Cade do last week? Did he do anything? Cade didn't even what? Cade didn't even play.
No,
Jackson Stratton played.
He wasn't ready.
They're on. So that's the
clear
thing.
Concussion protocol.
Iowa three quarterbacks this season. The Brendan Sullivan era was sadly too brief, but it's like somehow they just are able to do it week after week.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it bodes well for old Nebby grabbing another one.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, they have a super competent dude running the offense for the first time in a long time. So,
hey, I mean, if that's the thing, if they get their shit together for the first time this season, that we've said from the very beginning that the talent is there.
Yep.
And if this team can put it together against Iowa, I mean, they just got to 6. 8 is in play. Like they're, I'll just leave it there. But
Sorry,
we're hoping for 6.
I just threw up a bit in my mouth there.
Yeah.
No. Big noon Saturday. Michigan, Ohio State. Ohio State a 21-point home favorite. Come on.
So I mean, look, this game.
Yeah. What do we think?
This game has gone sideways so many times.
It's true.
I think it is extremely difficult to see a way for Michigan to win this, especially given the way you beat Ohio State is you got to be able to throw on them.
That's one thing Michigan does not do well.
It's not something they do well. They looked. Granted, some of it was us, but our defense has been pretty decent most of this year, right? And they looked like they were on a different level offensively against us. Now, this game is at the shoe. Mm-hmm. Ohio State has every one of those $20 million they spent in the offseason was in service of beating Michigan in this game. So this is the thing that they've been for 364 days. This is all that has mattered to them. And there's going to be a laser focus and an intensity that will be pretty much unmatched in college football on Saturday. But if that doesn't land in the first quarter, and Ohio State has played so-so first quarters their last 2 games,
yeah,
and if they open the door, I don't know. Like Michigan's got a lot of talent. They can run the ball. They can muck it. They can muddy it up and muck it up. They can cause a lot of disruption and pressure against an offense with their defensive line. A one-score game, it's unlikely, but it is probably more plausible than our bowl chances. I'll put it that way.
Sure. I mean, I respect where respect is due. Ohio State's an awesome football team.
They're incredible, and they're playing so well. There's no reason to doubt them.
That's the thing. I mean, this line, sure, 42-21, you could talk me into that. 35-14, something like that. That sounds right.
Given the opportunity, they will try to score 100 points in this game.
Yeah, they will.
They're like the state of Ohio
is
frothing at the mouth about Michigan for 3 seasons because they felt like they've been the better team for 3 seasons, and yet they've lost 3 in a row. And now finally Harbaugh's gone, and they want all of that smoke.
Right.
Yeah. Maryland at Penn State, 2:30 on Big Ten Network.
Speaking of teams that are going to try to score all the points, Penn State's going to be looking for style points here, and Maryland is going to give them all the style points that they want.
Penn State's a 25-point favorite, just by the way.
Yeah.
And if somehow, some way, Ohio State loses to Michigan, I mean, imagine Will Howard gets injured.
Yeah.
Right? Should Ohio State lose to Michigan, Penn State would be into the Big Ten championship.
Now, is the tiebreaker between Penn State and Indiana?
Yes.
It is for Penn State.
Yes. I don't know why. I don't know what the tiebreaker is, but all the scenarios that everybody's talking about, that if Ohio State loses, Penn State's in. And if they both lose, Indiana's in.
And then it's Indiana. Okay.
And I assume that's because they all have one loss, but and there's no head-to-head, but I assume that's
but I mean, they both lost to Ohio State.
Right. Exactly. So there's no head-to-head advantage.
Yeah.
So I assume it goes to like playoff ranking, or maybe it's like the total record of your opponents or something like that.
I have not gone deep into the tie-breaking scenarios, but I mean there's a lot.
The fact that there were so many
that
they didn't realize for like a solid week that Oregon had clinched the spot in the championship game.
I just trust what's being reported, that should Ohio State lose, Penn State's in.
Sure. Unless they lose to Maryland.
Correct.
Yeah. Which, okay. 2:30 CBS, Notre Dame at USC. Notre Dame a 7.5-point road favorite.
There's part of me that keeps wanting to come back to we know about the raw talent on USC and everything. It's not a good football team. They're not executing right now at all. And Notre Dame is. Notre Dame's playing awesome football right now.
Do you guys know how many true road games Notre Dame has played this year?
No, how many?
2.
Wow.
They played at Texas A&M to open the year, which they won, to their credit. And they played at Purdue in week 3, which they also won.
So one away game this season.
Yeah. One away game this season. And they're flying to USC. I think they're better across the board. This is another one of those games that has been a surprise in many years. But I think the Irish have figured out who they are and how to do their thing. I think early on there were some struggles in OC quarterback kind of figuring out what the right MO was, but they seem to have it sorted.
And they're sitting there ready to host a playoff game. Oh
my God!
Because they will be hosting the first round playoff game, at Notre Dame Stadium.
Yeah, my niece is a junior this year, and she's saying there's a lot of discussion about how will they navigate shift finals to accommodate that event should it occur.
Interesting.
But let's just say the excitement is palpable.
You got Rutgers at Michigan State. Michigan State is a 1.5-point home favorite. Michigan State sitting at 5-6. Rutgers 6-5. So Michigan State needs to win this one to get bowl eligible.
So we need them to lose
We
Michigan
do.
State. It's funny too, because I think if I'm made to pick here, I think Rutgers is going to win. But
this is when you go back to summer previews. Michigan State is definitely better than we thought they were going to be, and Rutgers is worse than we thought they were going to be. I think Rutgers is playing definitely better football right now. But it is
how will they bounce back to that Illinois loss, though?
Yeah,
I mean, they gave that game away.
Yeah, well, we will see. And again, like Michigan State, if they bowled this year, what a titanic overachievement! Like that's an amazing job.
Yeah.
I don't know that I agree that Rutgers is playing better. I mean, they beat Minnesota, but then they beat Maryland and they lost to Illinois.
Yeah, I mean, they're winning. Let's put it this way: they're winning some football games now. When I watched that Wisconsin game, I was like, "This team's not going to win another game this season." Like they were as bad as I've seen anyone.
I guess 2 weeks ago, Michigan State lost by 22 to Illinois. So this is another one where like Illinois played Rutgers at Rutgers and barely beat them. Michigan State played Illinois at Illinois and got thumped. And now Rutgers has to come to Michigan State. It does feel like travel and like I don't even know it's the travel as much as just being on the road in the Big Ten has been a thing this year. For sure. Yeah. And I kind of just give a little bit of a nod to Michigan State as a result. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
The other piece of it is the way Michigan State beat Iowa and shutting down their run. And that feels like a way to stop Rutgers.
Yeah. 2:30 p.m. Central on Big Ten Network. This is a 12:30 p.m. start in Los Angeles where Fresno State takes on UCLA. UCLA is an 8-point home favorite against a 6-5 Fresno State.
I have literally nothing to say about this game.
Is this just like another juggled thing where it's like because is this just
because of Notre Dame SC?
Because of Notre
Dame.
Yeah,
Notre Dame SC. Yeah.
Kind of stinks for UCLA, but hopefully they can get a season-ending win.
They played last week. It's kind of always it's always been this way, actually.
Yeah, no, it has. It has. They played the week. The LA game is the week before, and then USC. Well, when it's in Southern California,
yes,
it's the last game of the year, and when it's in Notre Dame, it's like middle of the season, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and then their last game is at Stanford, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Purdue, Indiana, 6 p.m.
Hide your kids,
FS1.
Hide your wife. Hide your kids,
in Bloomington, folks.
29. This game could be 80-0. I don't like. What?
I mean, you talk about style points.
Yeah.
This is the style points game. Kurt Cignetti. I mean, like might as well call him Tony Hawk for this game.
Exactly. Like why 29? Purdue's not scoring points in this game. You think Indiana's going to turn it off when they hit 40?
And
no way.
Okay. Indiana by 29, the total is 56.5. They're expecting Purdue to score here.
I don't.
That doesn't make any sense to me.
Again, one of these coaches is going to win Coach of the Year. The other's getting fired the day after. One of these teams is going to go 1-11. One's going to go 11-1. And the team that's going to go 11-1 hates the other team. And coach has been vociferous about how he runs it up on teams like this. They're going to try to pile drive Purdue. I mean, 60 seems fair, but again, I don't see a ceiling here. 29.
I mean, in Cignetti's much recounted intro to IU fans at a basketball game last year, he called out 3 teams. He said, Michigan sucks, Ohio State sucks, Purdue sucks. Well, Michigan out played it tight against Indiana. Ohio State took it to them. Maybe Purdue follows suit.
Maybe.
And maybe pigs fly on Sunday.
And monkeys might fly out of my butt. Yes. 6:30 on NBC, Washington, Oregon. Games in Eugene. Oregon's a 19-point favorite. Oregon.
I was going to say, is this the massive shocker that no one saw coming? I kind of doubt it. These teams are rivals.
No, and here's why.
Yeah.
Because Oregon has taken endless shit for not having been able to beat Washington the last couple of years.
It's true. Oregon lost to Washington twice last year.
That's a good point.
That kept them out of the national championship game, or kept them out of the playoff.
Washington has neither the talent nor the head coach, in my opinion, to be able to like Oregon is going to go gangbusters in this game.
But if Oregon couldn't do it with the NFL's best quarterback, though, I don't know how they're going to be able to do it now. With heat-seeking missile Bo Nix, Denver Broncos' finest. No, I will say, I don't know. I love Curtis Rourke. I love me some Curtis Rourke. I think if you give me one quarterback in college football this year and only one, Dylan Gabriel is the guy that I pick. He's electric. I watch him and I'm like, I would follow this dude anywhere. He's incredible, running and throwing. Yeah, they're the number one team for a reason. They're incredible. And you're right. I mean, I was just entertaining the thought, but I think Oregon's going to put it on them.
Yeah. Looking nationally, any other big rivalry games that sort of? I mean, this Texas A&M game is fun. Only because
it would have been a lot more fun if A&M
would have been more fun
if
A&M won. Yeah. But it's the first time these two guys have played in a long time since when A&M left for the SEC, and they were like, "Yeah, we're not playing you anymore." And Texas is like, "Well, here we are. Let's go."
It's cool to have that back.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of hate. Clemson, South Carolina, same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Not like that they haven't played each other, but South Carolina's kind of had a little bit of a magical season this season. I would love to see them take down Clemson.
Tennessee at Vandy.
Yeah.
Can Vandy get one more?
Yeah,
Vandy
go
home
Vols.
Magic.
Go Vols.
Go Vol. What are you talking about?
You mean go
Not
Commodores?
Vols. Not Vols.
Go Doors.
Commodores. I meant Doors. I meant Doors, not Vols.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't hate Tennessee or anything, but go Commodores.
Cal SMU.
Cal SMU. Oh, the Calgorithm strikes one last time.
God.
Actually, no, because they're 6-5. Cal's going bowling. Let's see how that goes.
I love it.
Go.
Which is great. Just as many as we were joking, Cal should just get to keep playing football games against someone for the next 2 months, just so we get these tweets. The two head shake with Cal and SMU what do they share? Hating the death penalty.
It's pretty
incredible.
It's pretty cool that Cal's QB broke down in tears being interviewed after the game against Stanford. And beating them last week, getting bowl eligible, and just it's pretty cool. That's a team. I don't know the last time Cal was it Aaron Rodgers was the last time that they were bowl eligible. I can't even.
Jared Goff had no taken in bowling, right?
I was going to say, I don't think, if that was true, Scuzz, I don't think the people doing all the Calgorithm tweets would admit that it was true. Let's put it that
way. Let's see.
Is the SEC championship game Texas Georgia?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, they went bowling last year. Okay, so I'm stupid. Yeah, they went 6-7 last year. Went to the Independence Bowl. But before that, it had been 2019.
I credit every one of their wins to the Calgorithm. I give them. The Calgorithm had me believing that they had way more wins than they did, 6 or 7 games into the season. This team lost to Florida State, and I thought they'd beaten Florida State just based on the tweets. They're.
And this is another one. Cal's playing SMU and Stanford is playing San Jose State. So that's another one that they don't play. They play their rivalry week a week early as well.
I don't know if this can happen, but I feel like the karmic thing that needs to happen is Cal needs to get into the Pop-Tart Bowl. I need the Calgorithm and the Pop-Tart Bowl mixed together. I hope that can happen.
Oh my God!
Is there another Pop-Tart this year? Because last year's got eaten.
Well, no. There's 3 this year.
3?
Oh my gosh!
There's 3.
Oh God!
3 different flavors.
They've already planned it out.
This is what bowls
are leaning into it. They're leaning into it.
This is what bowls are going to become now.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
amazing.
I did. Was it Nicole Auerbach who posted a picture of herself in she got a Pop-Tart costume for Halloween, or maybe that was somebody else. But I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, and anything else? I mean, okay, so here's one. NC State, North Carolina. North Carolina just fired Mac Brown. NC State is 5-6.
Mac's still coaching this game.
Is he still coaching
win one
this
for
game?
the Gipper?
All right, so that would be.
Come on, y'all, win one for old Mac.
I mean, it's pretty funny though, that his tenure is about to. I mean, I was in high school watching Mac Brown, coach for the North Carolina Tar Heels, against Florida State in like massive football games, and then he went into the whole Texas Odyssey and then back, and now that's all coming to an end. I mean, it's things that he's being quote unquote fired, because really he should just be able to ride off into the sunset here. Like, this should just be framed as a retirement. But yeah, get us one. You can be part of this 10-team parlay that Northwestern has going, Mac Brown.
Anything else jumping out? I mean, I'm interested in like all of the there's a bunch of games that are going to decide the conference championships the next week. I don't know what all of them are, but there's a bunch of them.
And just like all the permutations, like for all the hand wringing about the playoff, and I'm not going to pretend like I was the hugest fan of the format. Like, it's making the end of the season exciting, and everyone's liking it. Like, it's getting a lot of cool, interesting teams from all over the nation are being talked about right now, and it's a colossal win.
Anything else to mention before we go? I mean, basketball.
Thanksgiving night game. So we're playing Butler. While you're all slipping into your turkey coma, we're going to be tipping off against Butler in Arizona. I think it's 6 p.m. Central. So I can't guarantee that I'll be watching that game, because I'm sure it'll be Thanksgiving celebration wherever we are. I'm sure it's going to be football at the big family gathering.
Well, we'll be talking about it more after the holiday as well. But December 6th, Big Ten opener, Illinois, 8 p.m. Central, Friday night. We are doing our drawing for our tickets for this game. Get in your 5-star reviews. Take a screen grab. Shoot it to us. If you've already given us a 5-star review and you want to recruit some new subscribers, find a way to screenshot that, send it our way. Like, help spread the pod through one of those two ways, and you will be eligible for a drawing for our 2 season tickets. They're up in section 208. Great view of the court. For the Illinois game.
The sold out Illinois game.
Indeed.
Yeah.
So, again, congratulations to field hockey. You're national champions. So happy, so excited, so much fun. And let the dynasty continue.
Yeah, and it's going to be. I think the good times are going to be rolling for this team. The star power is not going anywhere.
So with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlottpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube, at Westlot Pirates, and you can always email the show, westlotpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us in the west lot of Ryan Field flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Scasbo, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.